What does it mean to die? For most of us today, death is wrapped in rituals, funerals, cemeteries, prayers, tombstones, and memorials. But imagine, for a moment, a world stripped of all that. A world where death was nothing more than the silent collapse of a body, left to decay under the open sky, forgotten as quickly as life ended. And yet, something changed. Somewhere in the deep shadows of prehistory, long before written language, before cities, before the first sparks of civilization, humans began to do something remarkable. They began to bury their dead. Why? This act, so simple on the surface, is in fact one of the greatest turning points in human evolution. To dig a grave, to carefully place a body, sometimes with tools, food, flowers, or pigments, it was more than practicality. It was a declaration that the dead mattered, that life carried meaning even after its end, that memory itself was sacred. Archaeologists tell us that some of the earliest burials stretch back over 100,000 years, long before the rise of modern civilization. Neanderthals, often dismissed as brutish and primitive, are believed to have carefully arranged the bodies of their kin. Later, Ice Age Homo sapiens added ornaments, pigments like red ochre, and personal belongings to their burials. It was not just about hiding the stench of decay or protecting the living from disease. It was about something far deeper: belief, symbolism, the dawning of culture. But here lies the mystery. What exactly were these prehistoric humans thinking? Did they fear the restless spirits of the dead? Did they believe in an afterlife? Or was burial a way to strengthen community bonds, a way of saying, this person belonged to us, and we will not forget them? Each grave is a story carved into the earth. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, archaeologists uncovered a Neanderthal skeleton surrounded by traces of pollen, suggesting flowers may have been placed with the body. Was this an act of mourning, or simply the result of chance? In Sungir, Russia, two Ice Age children were buried side by side, their bodies draped in thousands of ivory beads, their grave goods crafted with painstaking detail. Why would hunter-gatherers invest such effort in the dead when survival itself was so uncertain? The answers are elusive, hidden beneath layers of soil, time, and mystery. Yet the question echoes into the present. The way we treat our dead reveals how we understand life itself. In this video, we will journey back into the Ice Age, walk alongside Neanderthals, and descend into the sacred graves of lost civilizations. We will ask what burial truly meant for prehistoric humans, how it shaped the birth of culture, and what it reveals about the hidden depths of human evolution. So let us begin. Because to understand why prehistoric humans started burying their dead is to glimpse the first whispers of the human soul. To truly understand why prehistoric humans began burying the dead, we must step back into deep time, into a world that was raw, dangerous, and untamed. The Ice Age dominated much of human prehistory, a vast frozen canvas where survival demanded resilience, cooperation, and ingenuity. Food was scarce, predators lurked in the shadows, and the environment itself was unforgiving. Yet, in the midst of this harshness, early humans carved out something astonishingly human: ritual, remembrance, and respect for the dead. Archaeology has given us glimpses of this transformation. Perhaps the most famous site is Shanidar Cave in the Zagros Mountains of Iraq. Here, the remains of several Neanderthals were uncovered, some dating back more than 60,000 years. One skeleton, known as Shanidar 4, captured global attention when microscopic analysis revealed traces of ancient pollen grains clustered around the body. To many researchers, this suggested the presence of flowers, carefully placed by Neanderthal hands. Could it be that these so-called primitive cousins had already developed a sense of ceremony, perhaps even mourning? The debate still rages. Some argue the pollen could have been carried into the cave by animals. But whether accident or intention, Shanidar continues to symbolize a turning point, the possibility that Neanderthals engaged in symbolic burial.
Moving forward, in time, the evidence becomes even clearer. At Kafza Cave in Israel, Homo sapiens burials dating back nearly 100,000 years were discovered. Some of these skeletons were positioned deliberately, suggesting intentional internment. One particularly striking find was the burial of a child placed with deer antlers on its chest, objects that had no practical use for the dead, but perhaps immense symbolic weight for the living. Then there is Sungir in Russia, one of the most extraordinary Ice Age burial sites ever unearthed. Around 30,000 years ago, two children were laid to rest, their bodies adorned with more than 10,000 ivory beads painstakingly carved from mammoth tusk. Alongside them were finely crafted spears and pendants. The sheer labor invested in creating such ornaments is staggering. It would have taken hundreds of hours, if not more. Why would a community pour such energy into objects destined to be buried underground? The only reasonable answer: symbolism, belief, and the profound human need to honor the dead. But these sites are not isolated anomalies. From the caves of Europe to the plains of Africa, from the icy tundra to the arid deserts, burials began to appear again and again, often accompanied by objects, pigments, or careful arrangements of the body. Red ochre, a mineral pigment resembling blood, was one of the most common burial accompaniments. Its use suggests more than decoration. It may have symbolized life, rebirth, or the essence of existence itself. Across continents and cultures, red ochre became a universal symbol in prehistoric burial rites. This raises an essential question: why did this practice emerge in the first place? For much of human prehistory, bodies may have simply been abandoned, consumed by scavengers, or disposed of without ritual. So why did graves? Archaeologists and anthropologists have proposed several explanations. Some are practical. Burying bodies protects the living from disease or predators attracted to decomposing flesh. But these explanations fall short, because many burials clearly go beyond necessity. The care, the objects, the symbolism all point to something deeper. Burial may have emerged from fear of the dead. To early humans, a lifeless body was not simply gone. It was uncanny, mysterious, and perhaps dangerous. Laying the dead into the earth could have been a way to protect the living from restless spirits or lingering energy. Others argue it stemmed from the dawn of spiritual imagination, the first flicker of belief in an afterlife. To bury someone with food, weapons, or ornaments is to assume they might need those things elsewhere. Equally compelling is the idea of community identity. A burial was not only for the dead, it was for the living. It reminded the tribe that this person had mattered, that they were part of something larger than themselves. Graves became markers of belonging, memory, and shared humanity. Even today, cemeteries serve the living more than the dead. They anchor our stories, our connections, and our grief. What makes these early burials so astonishing is how universal they became. By the end of the Ice Age, humans across the world were burying their dead, each culture weaving its own variations, but all sharing the same core idea. Death was not the end of meaning. It was a passage, a threshold, something that demanded recognition. And yet, despite all the discoveries, mysteries remain. Did Neanderthals truly believe in an afterlife, or were their burials more pragmatic? Were the beads of Sungir offerings to gods, symbols of social status, or gifts for the journey beyond? Was red ochre the blood of life, or simply a convenient pigment? The truth is, we may never know exactly what our ancestors thought when they placed their dead in the ground. What we do know is this: burial was a milestone in human evolution. It signaled the rise of symbolism, imagination, and culture. It showed that prehistoric humans were no longer just surviving, they were reflecting, wondering, and perhaps for the first time, dreaming of eternity.
Let us imagine a moment, tens of thousands of years ago. A small band of hunter-gatherers huddles inside the mouth of a cave. A fire flickers, casting red light across the walls. On the ground, wrapped in skins, lies the body of a young woman. She is still, her breath forever gone. Outside, wolves howl against the night. The tribe gathers, silent, gazing at the one who will never rise again. What happens next is not instinct. It is choice. Someone digs into the earth. Someone places a bead, a shell, or a smear of ochre beside her. Someone covers her body with stones. A ritual has begun. This moment, multiplied across millennia and across continents, marks the beginning of something revolutionary. Burial was not merely the disposal of a corpse, it was a symbolic act, one that changed the way humans thought about life, death, and meaning itself. The dawn of symbolism. The first key idea is that burial reflects the birth of symbolic thought. To bury the dead with objects is to believe that those objects matter beyond the grave. Whether or not early humans truly believed in an afterlife as we do today is less important than the fact that they were imagining possibilities. A stone tool placed beside a body might mean this was their weapon, or it might mean they will need this in the next world. Either way, it is an act of symbolism, an abstract connection between the physical and the invisible. Consider the famous Gravitanian burials of Ice Age Europe, dating back 30,000 years. Archaeologists have found bodies sprinkled with red ochre, adorned with pendants, beads, and carefully carved figurines. These were not survival tools. These were symbols. To spend hours carving beads only to bury them is a profound statement that the dead deserve beauty, honor, and remembrance. This is the earliest evidence that humans were not just animals struggling to survive. They were storytellers, philosophers, dreamers. Community and memory. But burials were not just about the dead, they were also about the living. A burial brings people together. Imagine the gathering of a tribe around a grave. The act itself becomes a performance, a final farewell, a shared moment of grief. It tells the group, this person mattered. It strengthens social bonds because it reminds the survivors of their shared humanity. Anthropologists suggest that this was a critical step in the evolution of culture. The burial ritual could have been the first form of collective memory. A grave is a physical marker of identity, proof that someone once lived. Even today, gravestones carry the same message. We were here. We mattered. Fear of the dead. Yet, we must not forget another possible motive: fear. To prehistoric humans, the body of the dead may have been both sacred and dangerous. Death was mysterious, unsettling, and frightening. Why did life suddenly vanish? Where did the breath go? Was the spirit still lingering? Some scholars argue that burial began as a way to contain the dead, to place them safely into the earth, away from the living. Covering a body with stones or soil protected the tribe from scavengers, but perhaps also from the unseen. If you believed the dead could return, restless or vengeful, then a careful burial was not only respect, it was protection. The use of red ochre, resembling blood, may have served a dual purpose: to honor the dead and to guard against their return, a symbolic sealing of the boundary between worlds. Over time, burial practices grew more elaborate, suggesting the rise of belief in an afterlife. In Sungir, Russia, we see an investment of hundreds of hours in beads and ornaments buried with children who would never live to use them. This cannot be explained by fear or hygiene alone. It reflects hope or imagination that life continues beyond death. In some cases, the arrangement of bodies suggests ritual meaning. At Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic, 3 young people were buried together, their bodies positioned deliberately, sprinkled with ochre, and accompanied by animal remains. Was this a sacred rite? A myth enacted in burial form? We cannot be certain, but it reveals the stirrings of myth-making, of spiritual narrative. Burial as identity. There is also the question of identity and hierarchy. Not all burials are equal. Some are richly decorated, while others are plain. This suggests that even in prehistory, burials mirrored social roles. A powerful hunter, a skilled craftsperson, or a beloved child might be honored with elaborate rites, while others received little ceremony. In this sense, burial reflects not only belief in the afterlife, but also the structure of society itself. And yet, even the simplest burials tell us something profound, that humans could not bear to let their dead vanish without acknowledgement. The body mattered. Memory mattered. The evolutionary leap. From an evolutionary standpoint, burial marks a leap in cognition. It shows that humans were capable of abstract thought, symbolic association, and long-term planning. It required imagination, the ability to conceive of something that could not be directly observed, the soul, the afterlife, the continuity of memory. This leap may have set humans apart from other animals. Yes, some animals show grief. Elephants linger around the bones of their dead, chimpanzees mourn fallen companions. But only humans took the extra step of ritualizing death, of making it part of culture. Burial became the foundation upon which religion, philosophy, and civilization would later rise. A window into the human soul. Every grave is more than bones in the ground. It is a message from the past, a whisper of what it meant to be human. The graves at Shanidar, Kafze, Sungir, and Dolny Vestonets are not just archaeological sites. They are windows into the hearts of people who lived, loved, and grieved tens of thousands of years ago. And when we kneel beside these graves today, brushing away the soil to reveal beads, pigments, or carefully positioned bones, we are reminded that humanity is not defined only by survival or invention. It is defined by memory, by meaning, by the refusal to let death be the end of the story.
We have seen how burial reflects symbolism, community, fear, and the stirrings of belief. But archaeology rarely gives us straightforward answers. Instead, it offers fragments, bones, beads, pigments, traces of pollen that we must piece together like a puzzle. And when it comes to prehistoric burials, the debates are as deep as the graves themselves. The debate over Neanderthals. One of the greatest controversies centers on Neanderthals. Were they truly capable of symbolic thought, or have modern humans projected our own beliefs onto their actions? Take the famous Shanidar Cave burials. The skeleton known as Shanidar 4, found surrounded by pollen, inspired the image of Neanderthals laying flowers with their dead. To many, this was proof of compassion, ritual, even proto-religion. But skeptics argue that burrowing rodents could have carried pollen into the grave long after the burial. Others suggest the flowers might have had medicinal purposes rather than symbolic ones. So what does this mean? If the flowers were intentional, Neanderthals were not so different from us. They grieved, they honored, they imagined. If not, perhaps their burials were more practical, simply disposing of bodies in caves. The truth remains uncertain, but the very fact that archaeologists continue to debate this shows how powerful the idea of burial is. It forces us to confront the blurred line between practicality and meaning. Homo sapiens and the complexity of ritual. With Homo sapiens, the picture becomes richer and more complex. At Kafaz Cave in Israel, burials dating back nearly 100,000 years show bodies carefully positioned, sometimes with symbolic objects. At Sungir, the thousands of ivory beads buried with children demonstrate staggering investment. But what do these objects mean? Some scholars argue they reflect belief in an afterlife. Others see them as markers of social status, early echoes of inequality. Were the Sungir children buried with such wealth because they were considered special, or because their community was expressing grief through abundance? We cannot know for sure, but both interpretations highlight something crucial. Burial became a stage upon which humans expressed ideas larger than life itself. Practical versus symbolic. Archaeologists often wrestle with the key question: were burials primarily practical or symbolic? On the one hand, burying bodies solves real problems,
Corpses attract scavengers and spread disease. Covering them with soil or stone is a natural protective measure. On the other hand, the evidence of red ochre, beads, antlers, and positioning points clearly towards symbolism. Perhaps the answer is both. Burial may have begun for practical reasons, hygiene, protection, and evolved into symbolic ritual. What begins as necessity can transform into meaning. Just as fire once served only to cook food and later became the centerpiece of myth, burial may have shifted from disposal to ceremony. Rituals of the living. Another perspective is that burials are not primarily about the dead at all. They are about the living. By burying their dead, prehistoric humans may have been defining themselves as a community. The grave was not only a place for the departed, but also a site where the tribe reaffirmed its bonds. Some researchers propose that burials were the earliest form of social theater. Imagine a burial in an Ice Age camp. The entire community gathers, witnesses the act, and participates in the ritual. It is a shared performance of identity and memory. This idea resonates with modern funerals, which are less about the deceased and more about the survivors who gather to remember, mourn, and heal. The mystery of red ochre. Few elements of prehistoric burials are as widespread and as puzzling as the use of red ochre. This pigment, resembling dried blood, was sprinkled on bodies across continents for tens of thousands of years. Its meaning is uncertain. Some suggest it symbolized blood and life, hinting at rebirth after death. Others believed it was a protective substance, warding off evil. Still others argue it may have been simply aesthetic, a way of coloring the body for the journey into the unknown. Whatever its exact meaning, the universality of red ochre speaks volumes. It was not an isolated custom, but a recurring theme across vast distances and cultures. That consistency suggests a shared psychological need to mark the dead with something vivid, something symbolic. Unanswered questions. For all the discoveries, many mysteries remain unsolved. Did early humans truly believe in an afterlife? Or was burial a gesture of remembrance without theological meaning? Were elaborate burials acts of love, fear, or social display? Did different groups bury their dead for entirely different reasons? Consider Dolní Věstonice, where multiple individuals were buried together, their bodies arranged and sprinkled with ochre. Was this a tragic accident, a ritual sacrifice, or something else altogether? The archaeological record whispers possibilities, but rarely shouts answers. The larger picture of human evolution. What we can say with confidence is this: burial marked a turning point in human evolution. It revealed an ability to think beyond the present, to imagine unseen realities, to create meaning out of mystery. It blurred the boundary between survival and spirituality. Some scientists argue that burial was as revolutionary as the control of fire or the invention of language. It showed that humans were no longer creatures of instinct alone. They were creatures of imagination. And imagination is the seed of culture. From burial rites came myth. From myth came religion. From religion came the frameworks of civilization. A mirror for us today. The debates may never be fully resolved, but perhaps that's the point. Each grave is a mirror, reflecting our own questions back at us. When we ask, why did prehistoric humans bury their dead? We are also asking, why do we? What compels us to build cemeteries, carve tombstones, and create rituals of remembrance? Are we honoring the dead, or protecting ourselves from the finality of mortality? The graves of prehistory remind us that humans have always struggled with death, with mystery, with the limits of existence. And in those struggles, they found ways to create meaning, ways that still echo in our lives today.
The story of prehistoric burials is not only a tale of archaeology, it is a mirror held up to ourselves. These ancient graves are not just about bones and beads, they reveal something timeless about what it means to be human, and if we listen closely, they whisper lessons that still resonate today. Lesson 1: The Power of Memory. When prehistoric humans dug the first graves, they were doing more than managing death. They were creating memory. A grave is a place that says, "This person lived, this person mattered, this person will not be forgotten." Think about how central memory is to our identity today. Cemeteries, memorials, monuments, all are direct descendants of those early Ice Age burials. The impulse to remember is woven into our DNA. We photograph our loved ones, build digital archives, and create anniversaries of loss. In a world dominated by rapid change, remembering the past gives us stability. The prehistoric grave teaches us that to remember is to be human. Without memory, there is no culture, no continuity, no story to carry forward. Lesson 2: Community in the face of death. Burial also reflects the need for community. Death is not just an individual event, it ripples outward, shaking the bonds of a group. In prehistory, to gather around a grave was to heal together. It was a ritual of unity. Today, funerals still serve the same purpose. They bring people together to grieve, to comfort, to reaffirm bonds of family and society. Whether in a tribal cave or a modern cathedral, burial is never just about the one who has died. It is about the living finding strength in each other. This is perhaps why we struggle so much with lonely deaths, with bodies left unclaimed or forgotten. Deep inside, we know, to bury is to belong. Lesson 3: The birth of spiritual imagination. Another lesson is the human need for meaning. The beads of Sungir, the red ochre of Dolny Vistonice, the flowers of Shanidar, these were not necessities. They were gestures of belief, or at least imagination. To bury with symbols is to ask, what comes after? Even if early humans did not fully believe in an afterlife, they were entertaining the possibility. This is the dawn of spirituality, the first step toward religion, myth, and philosophy. And isn't that still true for us? Our rituals may differ, prayers, cremations, digital memorials, but the impulse is the same: to find meaning in the face of the unknown. Burial reveals the root of our most enduring question: what lies beyond death? Lesson 4: Confronting fear. We cannot ignore the element of fear. To prehistoric people, death was uncanny, mysterious, and potentially dangerous. Burial may have been a way to contain that fear, to put the dead in their place, safe beneath the earth. Modern society often hides death, sanitizes it, keeps it out of view. Hospitals, funeral homes, crematoriums all create distance between us and the reality of mortality. But perhaps we have something to learn from our ancestors. By facing death directly, by ritualizing it, by giving it meaning, we make it less terrifying. The grave teaches us that fear can be transformed into ceremony, and ceremony can become wisdom. Lesson 5: Our shared humanity. Finally, prehistoric burials remind us of our shared humanity. Whether Neanderthal or Homo sapien, Ice Age hunter or modern city dweller, the act of burying the dead is a thread that connects us across time. When archaeologists uncover a 100,000-year-old grave, we feel something stir inside. We recognize the gesture. We understand the impulse. Across the abyss of time, we nod to our ancestors and whisper, "We do this too." This is why archaeology matters. It does not just tell us about the past, it tells us who we are. Burial is not an isolated practice of long-lost tribes. It is part of the human story, a chapter we still live every day. Reflecting on the future. And here is the deeper reflection. What will future archaeologists say about us? Our cemeteries, mausoleums, cremation urns, and digital memorials, what meanings will they assign? Will they see our rituals as primitive or as profound? Will they understand that behind every grave is the same impulse that drove the Neanderthals of Shanidar or the Ice Age children of Sungir? In a sense, we are writing our own chapter of the same story. Every time we gather at a funeral, every time we place flowers at a grave, every time we light a candle in memory, We are continuing a tradition older than civilization itself. A modern metaphor. There is also a metaphor to be drawn. Just as prehistoric humans buried their dead to preserve memory, we too must bury the past carefully, acknowledging it, respecting it, but not letting it decay unattended. If we ignore the lessons of history, if we fail to honor the dead chapters of humanity, extinctions, wars, forgotten cultures, we risk repeating mistakes. Burial in this sense is more than a ritual of death. It is a ritual of learning. The human thread. From caves to cathedrals, from ochre-stained bones to marbled tombstones, the thread is unbroken. Burial is one of the most ancient expressions of being human. It is as defining as art, as language, as fire, and it is still with us today. So the practical lesson is this. When we look at a prehistoric grave, we are not just studying archaeology, we are studying ourselves. Every bead, every pigment, every carefully arranged bone is a reflection of the same need that drives us today, to make sense of death, to honor life, and to carry memory forward. The graves of prehistory whisper a timeless truth. To bury is to be human.
Across tens of thousands of years, from the caves of Shanidar to the frozen plains of Sungir, from ochre-stained skeletons to bead-covered children, prehistoric burials reveal one unshakable truth. Humans have never been able to accept death as mere silence. We need to mark it, to frame it, to transform it into meaning. When our ancestors began burying their dead, they were doing more than lowering bodies into the earth. They were making a statement about existence itself. They were saying, life is not erased by death. It lingers in memory, in community, in spirit. In that act of burial, we see the birth of symbolism, of imagination, of culture. Without it, there would be no religion, no philosophy, no art, because all of these begin with the same question. What lies beyond the grave? And yet the mystery remains. Did Neanderthals truly lay flowers with their dead? Did the Sungir children go to another world? Or were their beads simply a final gift from grieving parents? Was red ochre a symbol of rebirth, or just pigment at hand? Archaeology gives us clues, but not certainty. The earth guards its secrets carefully. Perhaps that is the true power of these graves. They remind us that the past is not a puzzle we can fully solve. It is a mirror reflecting our own questions. When we ask why prehistoric humans buried their dead, we are also asking, why do we? Are our cemeteries, urns, and memorials so different? Or are they echoes of the same impulse that stirred in the minds of Ice Age tribes? The graves of prehistory teach us that humanity is more than survival. It is memory, community, imagination, and the refusal to let death have the last word. And so, as we stand before these ancient burials, we must ask ourselves, do we really know everything about our ancestors? Or are we still walking in their footsteps, carrying forward rituals as old as humanity itself? Because to bury is not only to cover the dead, it is to reveal the living heart of what it means to be human. Video, if you found this journey into prehistory meaningful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe our ancestors buried their dead out of love, fear, or belief in an afterlife? Or perhaps all three? Join us on the next exploration into the mysteries of human evolution, archaeology, and the forgotten depths of history. The past is never truly dead. It is buried, waiting for us to uncover it.